And here we are. Hi everyone, it's iBookBinding's live stream, and today we invited Richard Beadsmoore to talk about one of the bindings he recently made for one of the 6 Booker Prize shortlisted books. Hi Richard, nice to have you here.
Hi everyone. Yeah.
It has been some time since we last talked to Richard, and we discussed some other impressive bindings that Richard made a while ago, and yeah, Pavel just reminded us how long ago that was.
It's a good few years.
Yeah. Time flies. That's insane. But well, then nothing new. So as usual, my co-host is Pavel Voronin. He's Pasha. Are you in Serbia? Something has changed.
I'm in Belgrade. It's the season.
Okay. And I'm Stepan Chizhov. I'm joining from Windsor, England. Richard, where are you?
I'm in Ealing.
In
Ealing in West London, so not that far from Windsor, really.
Yeah, not that far. Yeah, I mentioned. I think Pavel had already shared our previous talk with you, a link to this talk in the comments. So if anyone is interested, please watch it. Well, after we finish today's discussion. But before moving to the main topic of our today's talk, could you please sort of reintroduce yourself to our viewers and listeners, because maybe someone didn't see the last talk or whatever, and especially because I think your stories or may be quite inspiring to people who are just starting to make books, or starting to make books when they are not 15 or 20 years old.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. I mean, I am, if you like, a late developer, because I worked for the BBC as a sound designer in radio drama for 35 years or so. So I really only took up bookbinding after I retired, and I did one day a week class with Cathy Abbott for 5 years at City Lit, which is a London-based further education, adult education college. And then I did 5 years with Mark Cochran at Studio 5, who's one of your regulars, I think. And then after various, competitions and things, I took the plunge to become a licentiate of Designer Bookbinders. And then I was made a fellow just over 2 years ago. So it's, I am very much a late developer, and I'm still, still developing, shall we say.
Well, I guess there is always room to grow and to develop. So.
Well, that's it. With bookbinding, there's always something new that you don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's it. Particularly as sort of, as someone who is basically retired, you could in a way say it was a sort of glorified hobby, although I don't think it's like that. But when I'd be doing something and something would go wrong, and I'd sort of start shouting. I'm afraid I'm a bit of a sort of shouting and swearing when things go wrong. My wife would call up from downstairs, "It's only a hobby," which would make me even more furious.
I can imagine. Yeah, that made me mad. That's true. So as usual, I invite all or any of our viewers and listeners to post their comments, post their questions in the comments, and we will pass them to Richard. If you are willing to share from where you are joining us, it's always a pleasure to see from which countries, regions, cities, villages, hamlets people are watching our live streams. And please also check the links in the description. There are some useful, I hope, links. Subscribe to our social channels. Check our Patreon account, please, because the money we get from our viewers, from our patrons, go directly to some research and some technical stuff that we need for the live streams and podcasts. And also there are links to Richard's Instagram and website, so you can follow Richard's work, projects, and progress over there. Please subscribe to his Instagram as well. So, and we already have something on YouTube. Elenina Harris, Holland, Michigan, in the United States. So, yeah, nice to have you here, Elenina. And how should we start this one, Pasha? What's your opinion?
I'd like to ask Richard if this is his first experience with book bindings, and if so, how was it? If not, how it compared to previous times?
It is my first time. I'll tell you what. I'll take you back from the beginning. Once I decided to take the plunge and have a go at it, because normally, if you're only a fellow for the first 2 years, it's not necessarily a good idea to do it. But I decided I would do it, and so what happens is, for those people who don't know, at the end of July, the Booker long list comes out, and that's 13 possible books, and they're whittled down to a short list of 6. So once that long list comes out, I read all the synopses, and because it was my first time, I didn't want to. Angela James does the organisation. I didn't want to say to her, "Oh, I want to do that book." Well, you don't know whether it'll make the short list anyway. So I looked at all the books, and there was one I decided I would say to Angela, I don't think I'm right for this. It's called Headshot, by the marvelously named Rita Bullwinkle, and it's about teenage American girl boxers.
Okay.
I said to Angela, I don't think I'm the right sort of demographic for this one. And the only other homework I did was one of the books, and one of the ones that was sort of one of the favourites, is James by Percival Everett. And this is a retelling of Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn from the point of view of Jim, the black slave. And I've never read Huckleberry Finn, so I thought that I need, just in case I got that, I don't want to have to start reading Huckleberry Finn when I'm trying to be doing the binding. So I did read that beforehand. Other than that, I just sort of left it to chance. So the first, the short list comes out at the beginning of September. And a few days later, the package arrives. Pavel, if you could have the first slide.
Yeah.
Yep. So it comes in a big pack of sheets, unfolded, uncut. So the first thing to do is to read it, and you also get a reading copy. If I can just show that. So I read. What I do is what I also used to do with scripts. Read it through first. Don't take any notes or anything. Just read it as a reader, and because you never know, there might be a twist at the end that completely alters how you would sort of say you would mic it up or whatever. So I read the story first, and I have to say, it's if anyone wants to buy it, it is a very good read, and it's not too long either. Occasionally, a book, you'll get something that's sort of 750 pages or something. It takes you. I'm quite a slow reader, and I thought, well, I don't want to be spending the first fortnight reading the damn thing. So but it didn't take long to read it. And then what I will do is I'll read what the sort of synopsis off the Booker website, because rather than me trying to explain, what the plot is, I'll read it for you. 15 years from the end of the Second World War, and the rural Dutch province of Overijssel, if that's how you pronounce it, is quiet. Bomb craters have been filled, buildings reconstructed, and the conflict is well and truly over. Isabel lives alone in her late mother's country home, and her life is led by routine and discipline. But all is upended when her brother Louis delivers his graceless new girlfriend, Ava, at Isabel's doorstep as a guest, there to stay for the season. Ava is Isabel's antithesis. She sleeps late, wakes late, walks loudly through the house, and touches things she shouldn't. In response, Isabel develops a fury-filled obsession, and when things start disappearing around the house, her suspicions spiral out of control. In the sweltering heat of summer, Isabel's desperate desire for order transforms into infatuation. leading to a discovery that unravels all she has ever known. The war might not be well and truly over after all, and neither Ava nor the house are what they seem. So there is a sort of twist towards the end. So I then started making, I'd read it through once and got the sort of main basics of the plot, and then I reread and started making lots of notes. And it's, in a way, it's a sort of chamber piece. It's basically about three characters, if you like. There's Isabel, Ava, and the house. And the house is sort of treated as one of the characters. Again, just a few quotes that I scribbled down when I was reading it. She belonged to the house in the sense that she had nothing else, no other life than the house, but the house by itself did not belong to her. Again, home, when she arrived, welcomed her with relief. There you are, said the dim light in the kitchen. I've waited up for you, said the rattle of the key in the door. And then, in a notebook, she made an inventory, divided the house into floors, the floors into rooms, and each room had 3 columns, items, how many, placement. Only I could be that tidy. And then it finishes up with a quote from, well, it's Isaiah chapter 56, verse 7. For my house will be called a house of devotion for all. So basically, this gave me what I was going to do the design around was the house. And it was going to be, if you like, sort of the floor plans superimposed on each other. I think, Pavel, if we just have the next slide. Yeah, this is all the pages folded. Actually, if you go back just to the folded ones, yeah. This was my first sort of agony of doing the book, because of course you get these specially printed sheets. It's roughly the same size as the commercial one, but it's better paper, i.e. thicker. So it's roughly the same size, but about getting on for twice the thickness. And there were 11 sections, and they were quite thick and heavy to fold. And you always think, I've got this one copy. You know, if I cut it too small or make a mess of it, then we've had it. Anyway, it went okay. So I think if you go to the next slide now, thanks. So I started sketching out ideas, and it was having decided it was going to be a sort of room plans in a way. It was going to be a sort of mosaic of different shapes, and superimposed on that there would be outlines of doors and windows. It was the first idea, and then actually, if you go on to the next slide, I think. Yeah. So I rootled around, and I got several boxes of, all those leather scraps. You think, oh, it might come in handy one day, and they never do. But actually, this time, I thought, well, I've got enough different coloured leathers. I don't need to start buying whole skins when it starts to get a bit silly. So, that's next slide. Right now, the first thing really with binding, well, the way I do my bindings anyway, is the end paper. And for this, I don't know, but if you say Holland to a lot of people, one of their first thoughts will be Delft tiles, blue Delft tiles.
Yeah.
And the other thing is another part of the book was to do with hares. Again, we have found a chest of toys in the attic, and Uncle Carol says it was left there by St. Nicholas for us. One of the toys is a stuffed hare, which I'm allowed to keep. And a lot of the pottery around the house, hares are everywhere around the house. So I thought, well, I'll go along to the V&A and just see what they've got. And luckily, living in West London, I can get in very quickly into the V&A. So you get to the V&A, and I went up to the ceramics gallery, which I'd never been in before, I have to confess. It's up on the 3rd floor. And you walk in, and there's all these marvellous sort of cabinets full of pottery and ceramics from around the world. And there's the Netherlands, which is great. The only trouble is, of course, I've got my camera with me, but they're all behind glass, so you get reflections and it's difficult. And then above the cases were tiles and pots that up on the wall that weren't behind glass, but they were about 20 feet up. So I thought, well, that's not going to work either. So then I had a look at, they've got a digital catalogue. So, Pavel, I think next slide. Yep. I went through the digital catalogue and found this. And I thought, well, this is a good place to start. So again, it was a question of finding it, and that was in another gallery a bit further along. And if we do the next slide, there we are. Lo and behold, it was a big panel on a sort of false wall of different animals. And the glorious thing was, it wasn't behind glass and it was at eye level. So I was able to take a fairly reasonable photograph. I mean, as you can see, the elephant down the bottom is quite discolored. I mean, I think they're about mid 18th century, these tiles.
What do you think they were covering? Where did they get so dark? Were they like part of a heating system?
Oh, they were probably in a fireplace or maybe on a stove of some sort. I think they probably are to do with heating. I think quite often they were in fireplaces. But there's a unicorn, all sorts of wonderful animals, and this hair.
I like how elephant and unicorn
Yes.
were about as likely to be seen by a common person in 17th century, and that's why they're together. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Yes. And then there's one or two of the animals, not quite sure what they are, but.
And also they were often copied from prints, so that's another connection with book culture.
Yeah. So this is the photograph I took of the actual photograph was rather better, and it was more in focus than that one is. But now then of course the snag was it's basically a square tile, and the book is not square. So this is where my non-existent Photoshop skills came to the fore. I mean, I've got Photoshop, but it's very much trial and error with me. But I managed to go to the next slide. You'll see that I managed to sort of squash it slightly and slightly orientate it. So it is now actually did fit the size of the book. Again, that was took me quite a lot of fiddling and messing around with it. Yeah, you know how it is. You always think, one day I will take a Photoshop course and learn how to do it properly, but I never do. So every time I start, I'm starting from square one again. So that was my end paper was sort of basically sorted. So okay, now the design is becoming to kind of a bit further on. On top of I was decided to do some tooling on top of it, and you can see here maybe on the left hand side the back of the book. I was going to do it in palladium, and it's more regimented. Everything's in its right place. Everything's square and straight on, and then across the spine and into the front cover. This is when Ava arrives and things literally begin to hot up, shall we say. And it all sort of becomes I always rather stupidly maybe I feel that we're going from Vermeer to Van Gogh, if you see what I mean.
Okay.
Probably not. No. Okay. Fair enough. So anyway,
well, if it works for you and if it was an inspiration for you of sorts,
it worked for me.
Then it works, and that's the beauty of the creative process. And maybe it will work for somebody else. I'm not saying that it didn't work for me. I'm just it's always interesting to see what inspired the creative process and how your thought process went, because quite often we don't have an opportunity to know how it all happened. So thank you for sharing that. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I got to this point, and then I think the next slide, possibly. Yeah. So then I was questioning narrowing down what color I was going to use. Now, I'd already decided on blue for the end paper because that was, the Delft tile bit. But I wanted more of a contrast, and because in essence it's a love story, I thought, well, go for the cliche, go for red. And I've got, but more basic than that, I've got a nice selection of different reds. I got a nice selection of browns as well, but I didn't want to do a brown book, so red it was going to be. So this is a sort of selection of different reds. I mean, they're all leathers collected over the years, so I've no idea, what.
Do you have a preferred vendor of leathers, or do you buy from different sellers, different producers? What's your preference?
They're usually, the Harmattan and Hewitts. I mean, those are the usual ones. But I do occasionally go into Shepherd stocked Alran, the French binder, and they have some very nice colours.
Yeah.
I think the top piece there in the middle, I think that one is an Alran skin.
But also the textures differ pretty
Oh
widely.
yes, I mean that's the nice thing about doing this sort of mosaic of different leathers. They're all different textures and grains.
While we have a pause, I will read a couple of comments. We don't have any questions yet, so if anyone has questions or will have questions, please don't hesitate to post them either on Facebook or on YouTube, and we'll pass them on. So we have Timothy Bindery. Hello from Vietnam. Sometimes when time allows, Timothy joins us. Nice to have you here. Glad to see you here with us. And then we have Shoshana Teitelman from Toronto, Canada. So quite a wide range of time zones. Nice to have you all here. Thank you for joining us. So yeah, let's continue. Please continue, Richard.
So yeah, this is again to match the end paper. It's just blue acrylic on the edge, and then that's real gold foil for the tooling on top of it, sort of gophering, if you like, I suppose.
How long does it take? Looks like it could be absolutely anywhere in terms of time. I don't know. Looks complicated, but yet.
Yeah. Don't tell anybody. It's actually quite quick. Because I'll talk about gold tooling later on, because the actual book is tooled in gold leaf. This is because it's foil. You just have to have the hot tool, and you just go straight on and get the impression. You don't have to blind tool it first and then glare it and it's basically a random design. I hadn't blocked anything out beforehand on other than the rough idea of it. So actually it didn't take that long. And then starting to put leather on I then covered the book, which my usual way of doing it, which which I learned from Mark Cockram actually. I mean, it's unsupported link stitch and then full linen attachment onto the boards, rather than there aren't any tapes laced in or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And then the leather going across the joint, this is scarf jointed, because the leather, most of the leathers on the rest of the book they've just got a fairly steep 45-degree bevel joining the leathers. But going across the joint, you need more of a connection between the leathers. So they're scarf jointed. So there's an overlap of about 10 millimeters on the leathers. Okay. So should we just go forward one slide, Pavel? I can show you the back of, I think, yeah, there you can see that's the overlap.
So
there's quite a...
You had to pair both, all three leathers quite significantly in the areas where they overlap, or how did you?
Yeah, what you do, yes, the leather that's going to be on top, you put a bevel I'll say 10 millimeters down to the edge. I mean, the actual edge itself, which is one you're going to see, there's a slightly steeper bevel along that edge.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you try and get it as smooth as you can, but it's not absolutely critical, you then stick the hair side of the leather that's going to go underneath onto it. And then you pair that flat. I mean, you could use a spoke shave. I use a French paring knife. And
Okay.
I think in theory you could possibly even run it through a Scharfix or a Brotman, but I'm not sure about that. But certainly I tend to use a French paring knife to get it level.
I wouldn't even think about pairing the lower level afterwards, but that's so obvious now when you said that.
Yes, you know that's it. You don't have to sort of think about, it's not a question of measuring up, doing a bevel on the bottom one and the top one and trying to match. It's much easier just stick it on and then flatten
exactly.
it. So I decided then to put, there was going to be one of the windows was going to be in the middle of the spine. And then it was a question of, do I do it before I put the leather on or after? I mean, there's pluses and minuses to both, I suppose. If you put it on afterwards, in theory, you can get it in exactly the right position. But you're working on a rounded spine and all that entails. So I decided to put it on beforehand and just hope that I got the joints in the right place, if you see what I mean. I think it works. So I think if we go to the next but one slide, we are, there it is. So there it is on the book. And then from then on, it was a question of, I didn't worry about, when I was putting the three pieces of leather together, I didn't worry about the sides. So long as the length was right, so it gave me the right amount of turning for the head caps and things. But the edges, I'm then going to cut into them to put the other pieces of leather in. So what happened at the edges, I wasn't too worried about, as long as it was roughly in the right sort of length. I think if we go to the next one, and there we are. So that's all the different pieces of leather put in place.
It's like the surface of the sun. I don't know, with all those fiery textures. My eye can't stop moving around it.
Yeah, and we're moving from down at the bottom. It's almost a brown. It's a sort of reddy brown, if you like, and we're moving up across up to the top right to the brighter red. That's the idea, anyway. And then, as you'll see, what I did then was, say, all those leathers, they've got a bevel, sort of 45-degree bevel on, quite steep, to put them together, and then to delineate the rooms, if you like. I tooled lines between the two leathers, and then it's a strip of black leather paired to about 0.2 of a millimeter, backed with Japanese tissue, cut into very thin strips, and then glued into the.
How do you achieve any kind of uniformity on that scale?
Sorry? I missed that.
How to make it uniform? It's so minute. You do need to...
that was through a Scharfix. And then it's taped down. The piece of leather is taped onto a piece of board. Then I can just use a ruler to cut through them. And this is the finish. But the line across the spine, that isn't leather. That's actually ink. I inked in that bit. And the windows, which I'll come to later, they're inked in as well. And I didn't ink in across the joint because you've got a very thin piece of leather, just stuck on the surface, basically. So if it was across the joint, the chances are it would ping off after the third time you'd opened it. So the leather, it's got a bevel down, and it sort of merges into the ink, which is drawn across the spine itself.
I have to say, immediately it looks luxurious with this variation. Like you can tell it took time.
It did, yes, yes. And various amounts of time thinking, because I did a sort of maquette, but again, my maquettes are never very accurate, really. Well, and the trouble with this, of course, was I didn't want to make an exact maquette because I'd only got a certain amount of leathers, and I didn't want to, use on the maquette the one piece I'd got that I needed for the actual book. So, yeah, and then what I did then was to play around. I don't know if you want to just show me in full, as it were, because I've got here. What I used was this is tracing paper with the windows and doors in place, and then I could play around with it, different positions, to try and decide where they were going to be. Next slide, yeah. And then what I used was thin, these are, well, you probably can't see them, they're so thin. Very thin pieces of acrylic, cut out. Then again, I could move around, and then I just drew around them just in the corners with a very fine, I used, for the inking in, I used the Staedtler pigment liner 0.05 nib. And then I went around them. So I went around with ink, and I think you can see there's the thin ink line, but I then tooled around with, I can't remember what it is, quite a thin, it's about a millimeter wide tool. And then I went in and inked them over. So you can see the black leather there around the actual pieces of leather, and then the windows and doors are ink.
And the border between the black leather and the red leather is non-existent. Wow, it's fascinating to look at. So many textures. In points like this, where two red leathers and black leather between them, I just can't stop looking at it. This is fascinating.
Yeah, I have to say, I think black and red make a good combination, I have to say.
Did you do any experiments with ink on leather before this project, or it's the first time you tried to do that?
I've used ink and leather before in other bindings, so it wasn't completely off.
Yeah.
But
what kind of ink do you use?
I'd say it was just this Staedtler pigment liner, and it's light fast. It's quite nice to use, and because it was only 0.05, and the actual impression was wider than that, I was able to run along and just fill it in without. Well, there's always a slight danger that you're going to go over the edge, and then of course the problem is, of course, you can't. The black leather around, if it goes wrong, you can just pull it out and redo it. With ink, if you make a mess of it, that's it. You'd have to take the whole piece of leather out and start again. But luckily, it didn't.
And
if I could step back a bit to this black leather strips, what adhesive did you use? Is it starch paste or did you use PVA mix to put these strips on the cover? How did it go? What process?
It was straight. Actually, it was straight PVA.
Oh, it was just PVA. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask you about the spine, because obviously on the spine there is much more movement, and elements like these thin strips may get, you know, warped or whatever. But you then explained that you used ink for the
Yeah,
spine
yeah,
elements,
yeah,
so
yeah.
that's work out, but work around. But yeah, okay, thank you. But
And I
by the
was
way,
wondering,
yeah, sorry.
was there at all no room for mistake? Like if the liner did slip, would you have started over, or would you? No, was there a chance to like add something? Or what
Not
was your?
really, no, because if one of the doors suddenly had sort of thicker lines around it, I don't think it would have worked. I think I would have had to take it off and redo it. I mean, because they're only different pieces of leather, you don't have to take the whole thing to pieces. You only need to take off those 2 bits of leather or whatever that it crosses and redo that. But it would still be, another 3 or 4 days work probably. I mean, just in passing, when people first started doing the book, I think they had about 3 weeks to do it, whereas now it's about 6 weeks. So, in theory, it's not too pressured time-wise, certainly compared with it how it used to be.
Yeah, 3 weeks is
And
just
this is,
insane for such a project.
oh, yes, yeah, completely.
And I think bindings have become more ambitious as a result. Don't you think?
Yes, possibly. I mean, I think, if you've only got 3 weeks, you really do have to go sort of straight with your first idea, really, and get on with it. I mean, I think I heard that David Sellers, brilliant binder who's no longer with us, but he used to do the sporting book of the year in a week. Mind you, I did hear that he was putting the doublures in on the train going down to London.
Okay. I don't compare myself to, to anyone like that, but I had once a class, and we were out of time and we had to sort of start picking things up, and while everyone was, it was during winter, and people had some warm clothes or whatever for outside, and I just in the last moments I just put some boards on the books we made with my class, and I stood on them just to save time on not using any presses or whatever. So yeah, sometimes you just use whatever you have at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
We have a question from Shoshana, which is sort of relevant to what we just discussed. And before we move on, I wanted to read it. Where the lines turn a corner, how did you make it so perfect? That's a good question, and also sort of related to what Pasha said before.
They're joined at the corners. They don't go around. The individual pieces of leather are always straight, and they're just mitered at the corners.
Oh, yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. Are they paired or mitered? So yeah,
They're mitered, but again, the advantage of using black is that it's easier to match up without being noticeable.
yeah.
I mean, yes, there is a join there, but it's not really. You can't really see it.
Yeah.
You can't tell.
Don't go in too close.
Well, even if we go very close, it still looks perfect. So,
and then I started to talk about the tooling design. Now, just one quick word about, you can see on there, although the position changed in the end, but down the bottom left, there are those little vertical lines, and then, and then there are some more in the middle, and then more up at the top. Now, the relevance of these is, I would just find the quotes from the book. If I can find them. Isabel took the spoons from the drawer and laid them out in the same order as before, biggest to the smallest. She counted them, 12. Then later on, she breathed hotly, counted them again, 11, one missing, one spoon missing. And then later on, she counted the spoons, 5. There were 5 left. So again, it's quite a sort of plot piece. So I mean, they're not spoons, but they are sort of, they represent spoons, shall we say. I hadn't got a spoon tool to use, and I certainly wasn't going to start making anything. Yeah. Next slide, possibly. Yeah. So then the template again, as this is tracing paper, as I used for the windows. I just ink pad onto the tracing paper, and then I could play around with it and then work out what row I wanted to make the design. So that did take quite a long time because I kept changing things slightly and redoing them. And there, I'm now starting to put the template on. So the template is made from, ideally, if you can get very thin handmade paper, but I know that's quite difficult to get hold of. Otherwise, a strong, thinnish Japanese tissue. I mean, I've used model spanding, but I'm not sure whether you can get that. But anyway, it's got to be a thin paper. The advantage of handmade paper is it doesn't really have much of a grain direction, so that when you're going with a tool, it doesn't try and sort of follow the grain of the paper. Mm-hmm. But so what I do is I stamp out the tool with an ink pad, clean the tool up, and then go in with a sort of medium temperature tool, not well below the sizzle point, to make a first impression. And then I think if we go to the next slide, yeah, so that's the first impression, and then I would paint the impression with water, a small amount of water, then go in again with a slightly hotter tool to crisp up the image. Then at that point, I would glare it, leave it for 10 minutes, put another layer of glare in, leave for another 10 minutes, and then after that, you can leave it as long as you like in a way. And then going with the tooling. So with the palladium, the thing about palladium is I quite like using it, but it's in a way it's more difficult than gold, and in a way easier than gold because it's quite thick. So if I'm tooling gold, I put 3 layers of gold onto the tool, wrap it round, and then go in. With palladium, you only need 1 layer. But the snag is, because it's thicker, it's harder to wrap around the tool. And also I find that I need more, slightly hotter tool and more pressure and more dwell on it to get it to stick. Sometimes it's harder to get to stick sometimes than the gold.
And the difference in color, palladium, what color is it? Like silvery?
It's silvery, yes. Yeah. I mean, but it doesn't tarnish. I mean, I think I think most people use palladium. I mean, I think you can get platinum leaf, but I think that's even more expensive than palladium. I mean, palladium's quite expensive, but not in the end because you're only using 1 layer most of the time. I mean, when most impressions have at least 2 goes at it, so there's 2 layers of platinum. Whereas with the gold, there's usually 2, if not 3 impressions, so there may be 6 layers of gold leaf in a gold impression. Okay. So we're almost at the end now, really. So there's the hair. This is the doublure. Now, we've got the hair for the end paper, and it's a question of what I was going to do for the doublure. There's a reference in the book. There's a quite erotic scene about eating a pear.
Okay.
So I thought, oh well, if I can find a tile of a pear, that would be perfect. And actually, you quickly saw the English version of the book before, which has rooms in it, Vermeer rooms, you might say. Apparently, the American commercial copy has a pear on the cover. But anyway,
Okay.
the trouble was I couldn't find a tile of a pear. I found one of a pomegranate, but it wasn't quite good. So it was going to be a hare again. And to make it, again, this is gold foil on gold leaf. It's tooled onto the image. And then on the next image, I think we can see that, there we are, that's the finished book with the two, the doublure and the end paper.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at it, ideally, I'd have had both papers the same colour, because you can see that the one on the left is more yellow, and that's because I used Zircon. And the one on the right is the paper that came with the, is the book, which was a very white paper, and I got nothing. I mean, I had no idea what sort of paper it was. I mean, it's a commercial printing paper, so I couldn't really match it. As I say, it's all right, but I think, ideally I'd have had them the same tone of paper, but can't do everything. And there we are, the finished book. So you can see, across the spine, we're beginning to get gold coming into it, and things are going to go a bit AWOL. The palladium on the window on the left is, 3 straight lines, and then on the right they start to go a bit wibbly wobbly, and then it all kicks off, so to speak.
Yeah, everything explodes on the front cover. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
it's a beautiful project, and as usual, it's really interesting to see to hear some of the technical things you had to go through and to think about while working on this book. So
this is the official photograph, and I ought to say it's taken by Neo Gilder and the Booker Prize Foundation. Otherwise, I might get into trouble. My only disappointment, really, and it probably applies to the other binders as well, in the official photographs and when they were displayed on the evening, they only ever showed the front cover. And obviously, in March, you need to see the whole thing to get the flow of the story, really. But it's a minor niggle, really. And I think if we go on to the next one, there's my prized Booker Prize invitation, and then the next one, there we are. Those are all 6 books on display on the night. I think you've had Mark already, haven't you?
Yeah, we have Mark, and
that's Mark's on the right.
Hopefully, we'll have at least a couple more people this year, but we'll see about scheduling, because it's always, we're all busy people, so.
So Marx is on the right.
That's right. Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Quite a group.
Yes. Yeah. It was nice to see them all together.
And I could not but notice that they sort of look like a set, even though, some of them. There are common inspirations between them. I'd say Marx and these two sort of look like a group, and yours sort of interacts with the one on the left. I like how they look together.
Yeah.
But now they are all separated.
And it is probably the last time that they were.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Although I think they went on show at Waterstones in Piccadilly afterwards. But together.
Yeah. Exactly.
There's yours truly with Yael van der Wouden, the author. She was lovely, actually, really nice person. So you get to present the book, and then you sort of talk about explain it to her. And I think the next photograph is there we are, looking at the hares. And finally, the whole point of doing the book is to go to the meal.
Yeah.
And despite what Mark said, there was dancing.
So, are we going to get any any details?
No,
Any
no,
more?
that's it. That's the end. No more.
Nothing happened. Only dancing.
Oh,
Okay.
well, there's snaffling 2 bottles of champagne, but other than that, that'll be it.
So I think I'll stop sharing now.
Yeah, sure. And here we are. So Timothy wrote, the book is beautiful. I like the gold tooling. Congratulations, Richard. And Shoshana wrote, magnificent. So yeah, I can only agree with them. And thank you for sharing the story of this book and the story of making of this binding.
It's been great. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
How was the whole experience? Are you ready to to do another book you're binding?
Yeah, yes, I think I might. Yeah. It's I enjoyed it a lot. I had moments of tension, but on the whole, I enjoyed it. And I think, normally, I suppose, like most binders, unless it's a commission, it's something that I've chosen, and I might have thought about it for 6 months, knocking it around while I've got several other projects on the go. Whereas to get something and think, okay, I've got 6 weeks, I've got, clear the decks, I've just got to get on and do it. It was invigorating, really. I did enjoy it. In retrospect.
That's good to hear. If we have some more time, we'll probably have some more time. How did your bookbinding practice and experience change since the last time we talked? Because 3 or 4 years, that's a lot. That's a lot in terms of experience, but that's also can be a lot in terms of how you approach the process. What do you do? Do you do commissions? Do you what's your why do you do bookbinding now? Well, besides making book your bindings.
For the challenge of it, I mean, what I do quite like to do different structures. I mean, the Booker was a structure that I do quite often, because I didn't want to start messing around with maquettes and things. But I mean, before the Booker, I did 2 Bradell bindings, one the single section Bradell, and then a DOS Reporte, Ben Elbow's structure.
Mm-hmm.
So for those, it's a question of making it. They did have to make a maquette and play around with them. So, I mean, in a way, I could say every time I approach a binding, I'd like it to be a different sort of structure or different materials, because I do quite a few stone veneer bindings. I don't know if you've seen those, but those are I was taught by Schneeberhardt.
We discussed stone veneer bindings. We definitely discussed with Lori Zauer, I think.
Yes,
quite a while ago.
Because I did.
So,
I did a class at Laurie's with Schneeberhardt, which is where I learned to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I suppose also there's always a feeling of when you're a licentiate, if it doesn't work, well, it's all right, I'm only a licentiate. But when you're a fellow, I do find there is more pressure. Because you think, this has got to be good. I can't get away with anything, if you like.
Yeah. So, do you have any of your bindings acquired by museums or something like that since we last talked? Anything like that?
Not really. I think the British Museum had British Library had already taken Mice and Men, which I think I discussed with you last time.
Yeah. That was the last
one. One of my stone bindings is now in the Bodleian, in Oxford, and that's about. And there's one in the National Library of Scotland, and Neil Albert has a number of my books, which will eventually go to the Yale Centre for British Art. So, yeah, that's it for now, I think. Oh, And had I done the Chinese bindings then? Maybe I had. Can't remember because it was after I did the Chinese bindings during COVID, so I think I must have. Because I did 6 bindings for China, which was quite interesting.
I think that was after we talked last time. Yeah.
And that's what I was gonna ask, because I saw your bindings in private collection in China.
Yeah. One I did for it was a well-known Hong Kong writer, and it was his 80th birthday. So I was commissioned a binding of one of his own books as a birthday present for him, which was a challenge because I don't speak Mandarin. So all the business about you have to read the book first and imbibe it all. Well, you can't always. So I just had to sort of take instructions from the person who was commissioning it and sort of show them some ideas, and then they agreed to go ahead with it. But, I was sort of flying blind for that in a way.
And
it was interesting.
Did you like the result in the end?
I did, yes. I'm sorry I haven't got it with me, but it was.
Yeah, no worries.
It was basically, I mean, again, slightly cliched because it was Chinese kites. So it was kites going across a blue background with gold tails and strings.
Okay. What are your plans for 2025? Anything special? Any not to say too much, but any competitions? Do you plan to participate in anything?
In fortnight's time, I should be in San Francisco for the Open Set. And
yeah, that's nice.
So yeah, it will be nice. Yes. And then we're having a holiday after that, and my wife's coming with me. So we've got 4 days in San Francisco, and then we were going to go to Los Angeles, but I'm afraid we've now changed our plans and sadly and going to Palm Springs instead.
Yeah.
But
yeah, unfortunately, Los Angeles not an option for some time probably.
No. But so yes, so I've got that's coming up, and then after that, I'm just in last summer I did a class again at Laurie's with Rahel Schäufler on parchment binding, a hinged parchment binding, and it was all right, the one I did, but I want to do one properly. So that's my next project, which is Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass in a vellum binding.
This one you can certainly read.
Well, I'll dip in and out of Leaves of Grass, I think. I don't think it's something you can read in one session.
Nice. Well,
I also really liked. It was something really architectural of yours, like with Gothic windows, wasn't it?
Oh, can you hang on 1 second?
Do you have any comments in the meantime?
yeah, no, comment section is not too active today, but at least it seems that viewers are happy with what they've seen.
Sorry, it was next door, but yes, this is on Durham Cathedral, and it's a hinged binding.
Oh, just a moment. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. So it's hinged, and so it opens out into 4. On the front, it's blind tooling, because Durham Cathedral has these fantastic columns, which are deeply incised in various designs, like that. And then the end papers are an old 19th century book on Durham. And then, as I say, they're hinged. They're held in by magnets. There are magnets inset into the board, so they fit 2 and then just open out. And they're tooled in gold, palladium, and metal foils in different shapes that I made.
So those colored beads are foils.
Yes, yeah, metallic foils.
Surely this took forever.
It did take forever. Yes, yes, yes. I mean, you know, it's bad enough doing 2 boards, but having 4 boards to do is, you know, I probably won't do another one. Let's put it like that.
I think there should be a short video about this binding where I asked Richard a couple of questions about the project on our Instagram account and probably on our YouTube account among shorts. So you can, I guess you should be able to find it if you search for Richard's name. It should pop up. But yeah, well. I guess that's mostly it for today. Pavel, what do you think? Richard, what do you think? We discussed what we wanted to talk about, and there seems to be no questions, but I think Pavel and I asked plenty of questions. It should, cover most of the things people would probably want to hear about this book. Beautiful binding and amazing work, and thank you for joining us today, Richard.
Thank you very much.
It
Thank
was
you
a
for
great
asking.
pleasure, and we hope to see you again in the future. Maybe you will have some interesting project you'd like to talk about, or maybe next book you're binding, or something else. So
Maybe, who knows?
so yeah, we hope to see you again, and we wish you and everyone else a nice, a good weekend, pleasant weekend. What I'm losing my words, so good weekend, and or at least the rest of the weekend, and. See you probably in a couple of weeks. We haven't scheduled yet our next Booker Bindings talk, but hopefully next week we'll have a date, and then we'll announce it at some moment. So stay tuned. Please subscribe to different Instagram, YouTube, Facebook channels, whatever that's in description. Please also check Richard's Instagram and subscribe. And yeah, we'll be here for maybe 30 more seconds while the video drops on Facebook and YouTube. But that's it for today. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Richard.
Bye, everyone.
Okay,
Thanks.
bye everyone. Bye.
So let me see.
What were you worrying that there would be only enough for 10 minutes?
Oh yes, I.
Pretty